Hello, my friend, and welcome back to Elevate Your Mind. I'm Wiener McGregor. Today, I want to invite you to look at your life in a way you may have never considered before. Here's a thought that's been rolling around in my head for a little while. Your subconscious mind is shaping your reality in the background right now. As you're listening to this podcast, as you're driving to work, walking your dog, folding your laundry, making dinner, your subconscious mind is working. It's interpreting, it's predicting, comparing, and it's looking for patterns trying to keep you safe. And most of the time, you don't even know that it's happening. I think that's one of the most fascinating things about being a human. Most of us believe that we're responding to life as it happens. But after 2 decades of helping people change through hypnosis, I've come to believe something different. And that is that we're responding to meaning our subconscious mind has already assigned to what's happening. You've maybe heard somebody say, that's just a story I'm telling myself, or that's a pattern I run. They're really talking about that belief that's been assigned to the situation and to the way then that they see the world. Let me tell you a story. Imagine 2 women, we'll call them Sarah and Emily. They're interviewing for the exact same position, same company, same community, same qualifications, same education, and they both worked very hard to get there. If you looked at their resumes, you'd probably struggle to choose between them because they look very, very similar. The interview is scheduled for 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. Now here's where the story gets interesting. The interview doesn't actually begin on Tuesday morning. It begins several days earlier. Sarah receives an email confirming the interview and her stomach tightens. Immediately, her mind begins running ahead. What if I freeze? What if they ask me something I don't know? What if they realize I'm not as qualified as they think? What if someone better interviews after me? She is not choosing these thoughts. That's the tricky thing. They're simply showing up. They're arriving to her. And over the next several days, she imagines the interview dozens of times. Only she's not imagining herself walking out smiling. She's imagining herself stumbling over an answer, forgetting an important example, watching the interviewers exchange a look, driving home embarrassed, receiving a rejection email, and she rehearses failure over and over and over again. And it's not because she's weak. We talk about this all the time. This isn't because of a character flaw. Her subconscious mind is trying to protect her. If she can predict disappointment, maybe it won't hurt quite as much. Then Tuesday morning arrives. She barely slept. She hit the snooze because she was so exhausted. Now she's rushing. She can't decide what to wear. The outfit she had planned suddenly doesn't feel right. She notices a wrinkle in her jacket. She plugs in the iron. It isn't heating up. Of course it isn't. Now she's frustrated. She spills coffee while trying to rush out the door. Traffic feels unbearable. Every red light confirms what she's already feeling. This day is falling apart. By the time she parks outside the building, her heart is racing. Her breathing is shallow. Her shoulders are tight. She walks into the interview already freaking apologizing for herself and to herself. Now let's look at Emily. Emily receives the exact same email. She's excited. She's nervous too. Let's be clear about that. She wants the job. Her heart beats a little faster every time she thinks about it. But her subconscious interprets those sensations differently. Instead of, what if I fail, her mind naturally wanders toward, I wonder how it's going to go. I've prepared well. I'm excited to meet them. She spends the week reviewing stories from her career, thinking about the projects that she's proud of, researching the company. She's practicing answers out loud while she's driving. And the night before the interview, she lays out her clothes. She brings an extra copy of her resume, checks the weather, sets 2 alarms, goes to bed feeling ready. Tuesday morning arrives. She wakes up before the alarm, makes breakfast, listens to the music that she loves on her drive, arrives about 20 minutes early. She sits in her car for a moment, takes a breath, smiles, walks inside. Now here's my question. Which woman is more qualified? The answer is neither. They're both equally qualified. Which woman wanted the job more? Probably both. Which woman deserved it more? Neither. So what happened? This is where I think we've misunderstood confidence for a very long time. Most people look at these two women and conclude one is confident and one is not. And that is not the whole story. Something much more interesting is happening beneath the surface. Their subconscious minds have been creating two completely different realities long before either woman walked through the front door. The interview didn't begin at 9 o'clock for Sarah. It may have begun years and years ago. Maybe in a classroom where she was embarrassed after giving a wrong answer. Maybe during a performance review that caught her off guard. Maybe growing up in a family where mistakes felt gigantic. Maybe after one interview years and years earlier that didn't go well. Her subconscious mind has been collecting evidence. That data I'm talking about all the time, right? It's creating conclusions. It's trying to protect her from experiencing that feeling again. And Emily has a history too. Maybe she had encouraging mentors. Maybe she learned that preparation helps. Maybe she recovered from disappointments and discovered she could trust herself. Maybe she simply isn't connecting interviews with danger. Two women, one opportunity in two completely different internal worlds. And those internal worlds began shaping everything that follows. That's what fascinates me. I love the brain so much. I love the subconscious mind so much. In this situation, the outside things, it looks like it's confidence, right? It looks like it's a confidence issue. From the inside, it's interpretation. Let's talk about Sarah and Emily for another moment. Now imagine you're the hiring manager. Sarah walks in. She's trying so hard to make a good impression. She smiles, but it's a tight smile. She's speaking just a little bit faster than usual. She's already edited herself before she answers the first question. And the interview asks, so tell me a little about yourself. It's a question she's heard 100 times before, only today it feels very, very complicated. She's thinking, like, where do I even start? Am I talking too much? Should I mention the position? What if this isn't really what they're looking for? She begins answering, and halfway through, she forgot something important. Now she's thinking about what she forgot instead of listening to the next question, and the interview asks about a challenge she's overcome. She knows she has a great story. She's told it before, except today she can't quite find it. So she leaves out the best part. She forgets the ending. She walks out thinking, I know I wasn't good enough. You could just feel the heartbreak, right? Now, Emily, the interview asks, so tell me about yourself. She smiles naturally. She's not trying to perform confidence. Her brain isn't spending half of its freaking energy looking for danger. She answers. She pauses. She thinks. She remembers the story she practiced. She laughs once. She asks, intelligent questions about the company. And she leaves thinking, I don't know if I'll get it, but I really enjoyed that conversation. That's a whole different feeling, right? The hiring manager writes a note. Great presence, thoughtful, easy to talk to, confident. Now here is what is so fascinating to me. The interview thinks that they just met two different people. But did they really? I mean, everything is so similar, right? Similar communities, similar backgrounds, almost identical resumes. Did they just meet two different people, or did they meet two different nervous systems? I've watched it happen over and over again. brilliant people who seem to appear uncertain, deeply compassionate people struggling to express themselves. I've watched extraordinary leaders minimize themselves. And it certainly isn't that they lack intelligence or talent. These people, like I said, they're extraordinary leaders. But their subconscious mind had decided something long before they ever entered the room. And that decision, that story, and that meaning that was attached to whatever experiences they experienced shaped everything. It shaped their breathing, certainly their posture, their facial expressions, their ability to remember information, their creativity, their sense of humor, even their eye contact. And you can feel it. You know it. You can feel, even before someone says a word, you can feel their energy when you're paying attention. And that energy is being given off by the nervous system, which is being influenced by the subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind doesn't just influence how you experience your life, it influences how other people experience you, which is a very powerful truth about human behavior. People often say things like, I just want to be more confident. And I get what they mean. But after doing this work for so long with so many people, and work out like this on myself, confidence isn't usually the first thing that we're missing. Safety is. So just think about a moment when you feel most like yourself. Maybe it's with your bestie. Maybe you're sitting around your dinner table with your family. Maybe it's laughing with someone who has known you for years and knows everything about you. You don't spend those moments wondering what to say next. You aren't rehearsing every sentence before you speak. You're not wondering if they like you. You're just you. Your humor comes naturally. Ideas flow. You remember stories upon stories upon stories. You're creative. You're present. What changed? Did you become a different person? No. Your nervous system simply decided that it was safe. The real you didn't appear out of nowhere. The real you finally had enough room to come forward. That's what changes the way I think about confidence. I don't believe we need to try to manufacture confidence. We're uncovering it. Beneath all the rehearsing, beneath all the overthinking, beneath all the monitoring, there's usually a capable, interesting, funny, brilliant person who's been trying very, very hard to stay safe. That's very different than believing something is wrong with you. And something else I've noticed is that our subconscious mind, it doesn't wait for life to happen. It is constantly predicting. That's one of its jobs. It's constantly asking, what do I think is going to happen? If you've ever driven home and realized you don't remember the last 10 minutes of the drive, that's your subconscious mind, baby. If you've ever reached for your seatbelt without thinking, that's your subconscious mind. If you've ever walked into your kitchen and automatically opened the refrigerator, that's your subconscious mind. It loves efficiency. It loves predictability. It loves patterns. Most of the time, it's wonderful. You don't have to relearn how to tie your darn shoes every single morning. You don't have to consciously remember how to drive. Your subconscious mind takes care of that. And then it also gets really interesting, right? It also predicts emotional experiences. If you've spent years expecting criticism, your brain is constantly looking for criticism. If you've spent years expecting rejection, your brain begins scanning for rejection. If you've spent years believing you have to prove yourself, your brain starts every important conversation with that assignment already in hand. It's not trying to sabotage you. We've talked about this so many times. It thinks it's helping you. It thinks if I prepare for the worst, then I can protect you. It's such a compassionate way of looking at ourselves. So instead of saying to yourself, why am I like this? What if you asked, what has my subconscious mind been trying to protect me from? That question replaces shame with curiosity. And you all know that curiosity is one of my favorite words because curiosity creates space. It creates some room. Shame makes us feel small. Curiosity opens the door. Shame says, something is wrong with me. And curiosity says, I wonder where I learned this. I wonder how I learned this. Those are different conversations. One keeps us stuck and the other invites us to grow. And the more I study the human mind, the more my clients teach me the most incredible things, the more convinced I am that curiosity is one of the healthiest emotional states we can cultivate. Curious people keep learning. Curious people notice patterns. Curious people ask better questions. Curious people remain open to changing their minds. And changing your mind just might be where changing your life begins. And that gives me so much hope. I always have so much hope for people who are feeling stuck or anxious or exhausted emotionally. I've never had a client who showed up to my office or stepped into Zoom with me and said, "Hey, Rebecca, I really hope I can stay exactly the way I am." They come because they're tired. They're tired of carrying something. They're tired of overthinking. They're tired of feeling on edge. Tired of having a life that looks wonderful from the outside, but not always feeling that same way on the inside. And I've seen it. I've watched it happen so many times, not just hundreds of times, but thousands of times. I've watched people stop fighting themselves. I watched them begin trusting themselves. I've felt their chest expand. I've watched their shoulders soften. I watched the pink return to their cheeks. I've watched their laughter return. I've watched marriages change because one person no longer walks into every freaking conversation expecting conflict. I've watched leaders become more effective because they stop trying to prove they belong in the room. I've watched people become more creative because their minds were no longer using so much energy trying to stay safe. Of course, I'm an optimist because I see this change all the time. And it's fun because our subconscious mind is always learning, always adapting, and it's always updating, which means today's interpretation of things doesn't have to be tomorrow's reality. Sometimes we imagine that change has to be so dramatic, right? Because our subconscious mind has this little program that change has to be a big deal and big dramatic things. Like one huge breakthrough, one perfect insight, one magical morning where everything feels different. And sometimes it happens that way. But more often, it begins with a different question. Like instead of asking, why do I keep doing this? You ask, what has my subconscious mind been practicing? Instead of, why can't I relax? You ask, what meaning has my nervous system attached to relaxing? And maybe instead of asking yourself, why do I feel insecure in this moment? You ask, when did I first begin believing I had to earn my place? Those questions don't criticize and they don't invite shame. They invite discovery. It's more data, right? We're just looking at the data all the time. And looking at the data and discovering something new changes people. I'd love for you to try something this week. Just become an observer. Become an observer of your own mind, not a judge, right? We're not about judging, just acknowledging. So be an observer. Pay attention to the moments when your body reacts before your thinking catches up. Notice what happens before a difficult phone call or conversation. Before you walk into a meeting, especially the ones where you don't know the agenda. Before you introduce yourself to someone new. Before you ask for what you want. Before you hit publish on that blog. Before you have that hard conversation with your spouse. Just notice, what's the prediction that your mind is making? Is it whispering to you, well, this probably won't go well? They're going to think you're ridiculous. You always mess these kind of things up. Don't get your hopes up. Don't disappoint anyone. Just stay small. Just stay where you are. It's okay here. You're safe here. Those thoughts can arrive so quickly that they actually feel like facts, but they are not facts. They are predictions. And predictions can be updated. That's one of the greatest gifts of understanding the subconscious mind. You stop believing that every thought deserves your agreement. You realize your mind has been trying to protect you all this time. Sometimes that information is 20 freaking years old. Can you imagine if your GPS never got updated? Think about your town, your city. How much has changed? Roads that didn't exist. Buildings that have changed a bunch of times. New streets and new buildings. If your GPS never got updated, you'd be driving toward roads that no longer exist. You'd be taking exits that have been closed for years. You'd miss the exits that have been open. You'd end up frustrated and wondering why you couldn't get where you wanted to go. Most of us would update that GPS without thinking twice. And yet we spend decades living from emotional directions that were created when we were 3 years old. I know it always blows my mind. Or 8 years old, or 12, or 23. That isn't a criticism. It's simply an invitation. I'm inviting you to ask, is this interpretation still serving me? One of my favorite things about hypnosis, and y'all know I have so many, is that it gives us the opportunity to revisit those old stories, those old conclusions. And we're not trying to erase the past. We can't eternal sunshine of a spotless mind the memories. The past happened. And we're not trying to pretend that difficult experiences didn't matter. Of course they did. But to ask whether the meaning we attach to those experiences is still true. Because events and meanings are not the same thing. That may be one of the most important things I've shared with you today. Events and meanings are not the same thing. Someone criticized your presentation, that's an event. You deciding then, I'm terrible at public speaking, that's a meaning. A relationship ended, that's an event. I'll always be abandoned, that's a meaning. You didn't get the promotion, that's an event. Thinking to yourself, I'm not leadership material, that's a meaning. One conversation embarrassed you, that's an event. The thought that I should never speak up again, that's a meaning. Our subconscious mind is constantly connecting those dots. And these dots are so old. Sometimes they're doing it accurately, sometimes with incomplete information, or sometimes complete misinformation. And sometimes through the eyes of the younger version of ourselves who was just doing the very best they could. So what if instead of spending years arguing with yourself, you became curious about the conclusions you've been carrying? What if your life didn't need a completely different set of circumstances, but it was the interpretation that needs to shift? I think that's why I never get tired of this work, because every single client reminds me that human beings are far more adaptable than we've been led to believe. Our identities are not carved in stone. They're written in pencil. They can be revised and expanded and strengthened and updated. That's hopeful. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this with you today. Because I have a feeling there are places in your life where you've been living inside an old interpretation without even realizing it. Maybe it's about money. Maybe it's about love or leadership or aging. Maybe it's about your body. Maybe it's about what you think other people expect from you. Whatever it is, here's what I'd love for you to remember. Your subconscious mind is shaping your reality in the background, But that does not mean you are powerless. It means awareness is the beginning of choice. Once you notice the pattern, you have the opportunity to change it. I'm not talking about it's going to happen overnight or perfectly, not by forcing positive thoughts, not by pretending everything is fine. We're not doing that. But gently teaching your subconscious mind something new, something that reflects who you are today instead of who you had to be years and years ago. That's where real freedom begins. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope this conversation brought something to light, and I hope it sticks with you. I hope that sometime this week you catch yourself in the middle of one of those automatic predictions, and instead of believing it, you smile and you take a slow, deep breath and you ask yourself, I wonder if there's another way to see this, or what else could be true? Because that simple question might be the beginning of an entirely different reality. Okay, until next time, my friends, stay curious. Pay attention to your beautiful mind. Drink lots and lots of water because you moved a lot of emotion today. Take good care of yourself and keep elevating your mind.